Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, back in January 24th, a thing called Bill 21 fell from the sky and basically flattened the former Justice Minister. Fast forward to last question period in May, and the Deputy Premier in the morning said that he had talked to judges, and in the afternoon called up the media and said, no, that's not what I said. Remember that? Well, Mr. Speaker, we are concerned for the new Justice Minister because on the first day he took office, he talked about negotiations with the judges on Bill 21. Remember that? And then in the afternoon issued a statement saying, no, that's not what I said. So now some time has passed and there's been an opportunity for briefings, and we'd like to ask the new Justice Minister where the bill originally came from. We know it came through the Premier's office, but was it originated by the Premier, by the Premier's Chief of Staff, or the federal head of the Liberal government in Ottawa? Can the new Minister tell us what his briefing said?
First of all, Mr. Speaker, when we look at Bill 21, when we look at the bill itself, this was a bill that was put in place not to tell the Chief of Justice where to do their work. The only thing that it does say, the judge will be able to say where the judges go, but it's where they reside. It's merely an administrative procedure. It's very easy to understand, Mr. Speaker. But for the members in front that want to make this an issue, I went throughout the region. I went even to meet the Law Society on Saturday night, and I never heard anything about the bill. But I don't know. I think it's only the members of the opposition that are concerned about this. I don't know who else is concerned about this bill.
This seems to have a bit of a concern, and I think the lawyers have realized not to talk to the Minister of Judges, not to talk to the Minister of Justice on things like that. But the new Minister should realize there are 311 different documents on this particular bill. So if it's inconsequential, if it's just administration, why were there so many pieces of documents? Are there policy statements? Are there policy discussions? Are there opinions? And why doesn't he release them? Is there discussion paper on this? And, you know, Mr. Speaker, this is the afternoon, so there's not an opportunity to change his mind. But again, I wondered if the new minister could tell us in his briefing, was he told that the original bill came from an idea from the Premier, an idea from the Chief of Staff of the Premier's office, or an idea from Dominic LeBlanc, the Liberal House Leader in Ottawa?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Monsieur le Président, Mr. Speaker, when the Leader of the Opposition says that the Chief Justice David Smith has a big problem with this, it might be one of the only people in New Brunswick. And here I'll quote, Mr. Speaker, from the member from Rothesay on the 10th of February. It's completely administrative. I don't have a problem with this. No issue with this. The system is working well. It's simply to make a change for the sake of making a change. Some people think it's a good idea, but I don't know why we're making a mountain out of a molehill. I suggest to the Leader of the Opposition to listen to his colleague from Rothesay. I don't understand why this has led to these changes. I don't understand myself why the member from Rothesay changed his opinion when this came to a second reading. So I'm waiting for your next question.
Tell you why a lot of people changed their mind on this bill, Mr. Speaker. Because it was when the former Justice Minister stood in this House and said he'd talked to the judges. He'd had phone calls with the judges. He'd had discussions with the judges. And then all of a sudden, after the House adjourns, he goes to the media and say, well, no, that's not what I really meant. And then it went from bad to worse when his colleague from Kelmpton Dowsey chimed in, and then it was worse on the CBC panel when he said, well, they weren't discussions, I was just talking to them. Mr. Speaker, this has become a mountain, yes, and it's because of the administration of this government. So why don't we get to the bottom of it? Where did this idea originate? And maybe we can go back to the originator of the idea and repeal this bill to save embarrassment for this government and potentially the federal government. Mr. Speaker, where was the original bill? Where did the idea come from? Was it the Premier, Premier's staff, or the Liberal House Leader in Ottawa?
The Honourable Premier.
Monsieur le Président, je m'excuse.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize. I have to rise in the House today. The leader of the opposition is trying to make New Brunswickers believe that he wasn't making a mountain of this before all the comments he described were made. So, Mr. Speaker, it is very obvious that for a while they have had a problem with this bill. But what is interesting, what my colleague is saying, is that the critic for justice, the member opposite, could not see any issues with the substance. So obviously they're trying to make political hay with this. It is just an administrative change. It's not more than that. And I am surprised that the opposition that really wanted us to be in the legislature to debate the topics of the day are not talking about what is important, like the economy, education, and the health of New Brunswickers, Mr. Speaker.
That's right, Mr. Speaker. Jobs and economy are important, and this Premier has failed desperately as the chairman of the Jobs Board. Mr. Speaker, maybe the Premier will remember when he was in opposition and he said, and I quote, this is from Hansard, "I'm going to tell you that I'm going to know every single number in our revenue and our expense. I'm going to make sure that the Minister of Finance knows our deficit by heart." Now that's on Hansard, so it can't be debated. It's there if he needs the proof. So just an easy question to the new Minister of Finance today. There's been time to be brief, so hopefully the Premier will be able to live up to his word and keep that promise that he made, that the new Finance Minister would know all the numbers. So can the new Finance Minister advise the House today what is the current deficit for the province of New Brunswick that she has memorized, and will she give it to us today?
The Honourable Premier.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, this is insulting. This is insulting. This is insulting for New Brunswickers that the leader of the opposition, who yelled for weeks that we had to come back to the legislature because they didn't have enough time to debate important topics for New Brunswickers, take time at the legislature for a quiz?
Use valuable time in the legislature to quiz ministers. Mr. Speaker, if he wants to debate important issues, then let's go. If he wants to debate the future of our province, let's do it. If he wants to debate what is the right economic path for New Brunswick, well, let's go. If he wants to debate how we're going to improve the quality of life for New Brunswickers by investing in education and health care, well, let's do it. But Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to sit here and let him insult the people of New Brunswick by using the legislature for some pop quiz to try to score political points. They wanted to come back, then ask the right
Premier. Leader of the official opposition.
Well, Minister, certainly what's happened here today is that the Premier's the one insulting the people in the province of New Brunswick. If he doesn't think that the deficit number is important to the people in the province of New Brunswick, then really he's the one that needs to be educated. Because when the interest that's being paid on the debt is more than that's being paid in various departments right across the province, such as environment, local government, such as, and eventually health care, if he lets the deficit continue to run unchecked year after year after year. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious, serious matter for the people here in the province of New Brunswick. And it's unfortunate that the Premier wants to make light of it. And as a new Finance Minister, again, we look at some of the statements that have been made in the past. The Justice Minister had talked about what our critics said about things. So, again, we bring that up. I wonder if the new Finance Minister can tell us, with the raise in the HST coming July 1, does she still think that that's the lazy way out?
Time. The Honourable Premier.
Monsieur le Président, je vais sortir.
Mr. Speaker, I will certainly let the finance minister rise to discuss this with the leader of the opposition, but I need to raise a point before that. It is interesting to see that the leader of the opposition is trying to criticize us when it comes to the deficit.
In which the leader of the opposition was a member, did a terrible job, failed disastrously, Mr. Speaker, in getting the deficit under control. They promised they would balance the books without raising taxes, without making any cuts. They cut, they raised taxes, and they did not even come close to meeting their targets to reduce the deficit. Us, on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, by working with New Brunswickers, by listening to New Brunswickers, we have made the right choices. Difficult ones, yes, but the right choices. And that was made clear, Mr. Speaker, again, when Standard & Poor's joined the other credit rating agencies to say that we have a stable outlook and a sound fiscal plan to come to balance, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of the official opposition.
Well, certainly, Mr. Speaker, when the government commits to the fact that they're not going to stop at any means of raising money from the public in the province of New Brunswick, they're going to raise HST by 2%, bringing in $300 million into the coffers. Of course, the Standard & Poor's and the other rating agencies would say, well, if you're willing to tax the people as much as you need to balance your budget in the future years, not this mandate, in the next mandate, we'll continue to give you a stable rating. Mr. Speaker, this government has increased the deficit even further to when we were there. Mr. Speaker, they've increased tax and they're going to continue to increase taxes in the future. So, Mr. Speaker, this government is on a path that's going to lead to bigger and bigger deficits over the year if they don't address some of their spending issues and some of the issues on taxation, because people are leaving the province. It shows in the workforce. It shows in a number of other areas. But I just, again, want the present finance minister to say, is raising the HST still the lazy way out?
The Honourable Premier.
Again, I'd be glad to let the Minister of Finance get up, but if maybe the opposition will allow me to answer, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition goes off for 57 seconds on a preamble and then asks his question with 3 seconds left. So I do want to address a few of the things that he mentioned. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the HST, I think it's important to recognize that we've listened to New Brunswickers. New Brunswickers are very responsible, and they understand that we have difficult choices to be made, Mr. Speaker, and that's why they said protect healthcare, protect education, invest in things that will grow the economy, and find a way, other than those things and touching those things, to be able to get our finances in order. And that's what we did. And I'd like to point out to the Leader of the Opposition that CBC did it themselves. They have declared that New Brunswick is getting the biggest HST credit in the Maritimes. So we have the most generous package to help the less fortunate, Mr. Speaker, by giving them money in their pockets, which will help the economy in turn, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Fredericton Grand Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are roads in my riding being damaged by overweight log trucks, particularly Portobello Drive and McCoy Street. This issue had its beginning under the previous Minister of DTI, so if he has the answers to my questions, I'd be glad to hear them from him. A special permit was issued for the logging operation to haul on these roads. This permit specifically leaves out a cost for damages clause. Most extended permits like this clearly tell the contractor that the minister will come back to them to recover monies for making repairs to damage caused by the hauling operation. In this case, the permit has omitted this requirement. My question to the minister is, why was this requirement omitted?
The Honourable Premier.
I'll let the acting Minister of the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure get up in a second. Mr. Speaker, I just have to say, though, I have to point out how this was a great example of what the opposition is focused on. The first words out of the member opposite's mouth, Mr. Speaker, were roads in my riding. Mr. Speaker, we have serious issues to debate. At least we think so. The opposition wants to cry foul over the last few months about not having enough time in the legislature. And what is it, the fifth or sixth question starts off with roads in my riding? Mr. Speaker, we are at a crossroads here in New Brunswick. We have to grow the economy. We have to make the right fiscal choices to be able to ensure the next generation that New Brunswick will be on a strong footing to provide good health care and the best education system possible. To have the fourth or fifth question from the opposition start off with roads in my riding, again, is insulting to the people of New Brunswick, Mr. Speaker. I expect more, and so do New Brunswickers.
Member for Fredericton Grand Lake.
I'm defending my riding, Mr. Speaker, and that is insulting. And who's going to cry foul when it costs $300,000 to repair the damaged road in my riding? I have been given photographs of McCoy Street before this logging activity started and after. There is clearly damage being done to the street, and that damage will need to be repaired. If there is no requirement for the contractor to pay to fix the street, then it falls onto the taxpayers. That doesn't seem fair, and it doesn't seem responsible on the part of the Gallant government. I would like to know if there were any discussions of optional ways for this company to move their wood out, either waiting for winter to freeze the roads or building an access road. Was this ever suggested by the department?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will answer the question for the Minister. I know what the member opposite is talking about. Usually, companies, when they haul wood, they ask for special permits when the road is not built for this weight to haul wood. But I know that the current transportation minister has said on the radio that when the contractor will leave your riding and the roads will be damaged, I believe that the minister already went on site and he wants to make sure that when the contractor is done hauling the wood, they will repair the roads. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The taxpayers could be on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars in road repairs as a result of this issue. There are allegations of political interference in this file. Allegations of political interference are nothing new for this government. We all recall the patronage email scandal in November of 2014. So before they even got started, this government was implicated. What is the Premier prepared to do? Will the Premier make a commitment today to personally look into these allegations of political interference and take action if they prove to be true?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Monsieur le Président, ce que j'ai comme
Mr. Speaker, the information I have about this road, and I understand the member of that riding to want to defend her riding, but what I heard is that the road was in very bad shape before we took office. If it is an issue for her today, that the road should be repaired once the contractors are done, from what I've heard, that's what's going to happen. But what I find surprising, if that road was damaged beforehand, it wasn't in really good shape at the time when they were in power. So I would just want to make sure that when one of the issues when I was a minister and the previous minister was there, whether it be in a liberal or conservative riding or green riding, Mr. Speaker, we just want to make sure that the roads are in good shape and safe.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to tell you one thing, Mr. Speaker. I'll never stand in this House and listen to someone tell me to apologize to my constituents. I guarantee you that. We're working for it. I'd like to welcome the new Minister of Tourism, Heritage and Culture into his new position and wish him all the best of luck. What I'd like to ask him about is some unfinished business from his predecessor, namely the large government tourism advertising contract. This is worth up to $25 million and would be a big boost for the lucky advertising agency that wins the contract. Now, this bid closed on March the 22nd and is still not awarded. Is the Minister familiar with this file?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Heritage and Culture.
I am familiar with the file. Right now, T4G is the current holder of the contract, and we're reviewing submissions by other stakeholders and making sure that everybody involved in the process is being heard, and we're making sure that going forward that we can have a great plan for the entire province. This is all around to be very proud of the province.
I'm going to ask the pause question period until we can have, we're having some technical difficulties with sound. So once we're able to confirm that, we'll resume question period.
Brian.
Let's try this again. Resuming question period. I recognize the member for Grand Lake Petitcodiac, and if the minister next to the Minister of Tourism can move the mic over when it's time. Please go ahead, member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this large tourism contract was held by a Fredericton firm, and they have bid on it again, along with a firm from Tracadie and also a firm from Halifax. The other company that has bid is M5 out of Moncton. They are the company that came out with that rogue poll a few weeks ago, and I'm certainly not suggesting that they are trying to help their chances, just noting that it is the same company. In any event, whatever company that wins this should be planning and filming and photographing next year's tourism campaign. Time's a-wasting, as they say. Does the minister have a target date for awarding this contract?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Heritage and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly wasn't my intention to have malfunctioning equipment on my first day either, but hey, we'll do all kinds of firsts. Moving forward, T4G, their contract will expire on August 31st of this year, and I must reiterate this is an ongoing confidential process. That being said, we need to make sure that whatever we're doing is thorough, is engaging, and making sure that all New Brunswickers are going to have a very great tourism season, and making sure that we're presenting our province and giving it as much exposure as possible within the parameters that are set forth in front of us. And I must say, so far the indicators are looking very good. I mean, U.S. tourists coming across the border were up 28%, and coming across the border and spending the night, that's really great to know. And, with the two-nation vacation concept, we need to make sure that our partners in the South are engaging with us all the way along, and we'll be successful together. Thank you.
Member for Gagetown, Petitcodiac.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, but again, if we're going to be running a campaign next year, it should certainly be in place by now, because unfortunately you just don't put these things together. As I said, this is something that was neglected by the previous minister. One would think that a bid that closed over 3 months ago would have been awarded by now. As of 12:16 noon today, the BNON site says the award is pending. The unique shades of spring have come and gone, so that's one visual opportunity that we've lost. All of the beautiful colors and pageantry of graduation season is over for another year. Another visual lost. Recognizing how important tourism is to our provincial economy, will our new tourism minister commit to giving the House an update on this file before we leave on this Thursday?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Heritage and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, we're still within the evaluation process, and as I said as well, we need to make sure that this is a confidential and ongoing process. I don't think that we have missed any opportunities to capture how great of a province we have here, especially with the technology we have here in the 21st century. People are taking videos and pictures all the time. People are sharing that information, and I'm sure whichever contract is awarded to whichever company, they're going to share that as well, because we want to make whatever we have known to the entire world that New Brunswick's the best place to live, raise a family, and best place to come and tour. So thank you very much.
Member for Chris Famsis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to reference a CBC panel several months ago in which the Minister of Health said to me that the excessive promises that they made during the 2014 election were the direct result of them being in office versus us being in opposition. So having said that, and now I'd like to direct my question to the new Minister of Finance, will your evaluation of the current spending, and I understand that's under the previous finance order, but I'd like to think there's some responsibilities that fall within your portfolio, that you will actually look at the spending, the excessive spending, and will it be part of the management of going forward rather than just a continual taxation program?
Mr. Speaker, it's my honor and privilege to address the question of the member opposite. And of course, just like our last budget took a balanced approach to reducing expenditures and as well increasing revenue, we will continue to take a balanced approach. We have a fiscal framework that is strong. It puts us in good standing with the credit raters. And Mr. Speaker, we are a responsible government that is looking not just short-term but long-term for the good of all New Brunswickers, and we want to make sure that everything we do, we take care of the low income, and we want to make New Brunswick the best place to work and to raise a family. Thank you.
Member for Chris Famsis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that response. And I guess looking at that, in order to get a good handle and going forward, and I certainly appreciate the response and the willingness to do that, but I would guess along with that goes some very important details around reporting. And considering that the last report we had was about 9 months ago, and the current, or the most recent one would be 4 months plus overdue, and I understand, previously the Minister of Finance said that we didn't need any rules around reporting structures because we would do good governance. So I would like to ask the question in relation to, do you believe good, accurate reporting and timely reporting is required, and does good governance include timely, accurate, prompt reporting of the actual state of this province?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
To the member opposite, Mr. Speaker, of course we want to be transparent, we want to be upfront, we want to be good fiscal managers, and Mr. Speaker, we're committed to doing this. We're the government, Mr. Speaker, who is committing to take the long-term approach and not just the short-term approach. We have responsibly done a third-quarter report, and we're now projecting a deficit of $466.4 million, 2015-16, and this, of course, includes a contingency reserve of $100 million. And, of course, final results will be available as part of the financial statements, which will be tabled, of course, in the fall. So we, of course, do value this, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Chris Famsis.
Thank you for the response, and I guess it's good to get a number. 466, that's about $200 million higher than a low point when you first arrived. And so you've talked about getting expenses under control. They're actually higher. Deficit, actually higher. Taxes, actually higher. The new spending on new items of whatever priority, actually gone wild. So I guess given the fact, and now we have a number, are there any plans to bring that number down? Are there any plans to reevaluate the HST and basically say, maybe it is a lazy way out. Maybe we can deliver better numbers without more taxation. Because I happen to think that innovation starts at home. Innovation starts with government. And innovation means you just don't tax and spend. Can you tell me, would you relook at the HST?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad to hear that we have agreement from the members opposite that innovation starts at home, and I think we're doing a great job. We are putting high priority we're putting high priority on innovation. I myself have had opportunities to meet with a number of great innovative businesses very interested in New Brunswick. And Mr. Speaker, we have a commitment. It was part of our budget. The HST will be increasing as of July 1st, and this was part of a balanced budget where, again, we looked at expenditure reduction and revenue increase. And, Mr. Speaker, this is happening because we are facing our fiscal challenges in New Brunswick, and that is responsible.
Member for Moncton Southwest. Member for Moncton Northwest, then.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On June 13th, Mr. Speaker, the Glenn government held a big photo op announcing a new nursing home in Miramichi, and I've lost count of how many times now that nursing home has been announced and how many times we've heard that it's not a P3 and that it is P3, not and is, and how many times the Auditor General apparently has heard that too. Anyway, the Minister of Seniors has stated, and I quote, "Our experts have performed an analysis of all pros and cons of this construction, and this is the best value and most efficient use of our province's resources while ensuring we meet the needs of our seniors." Can the Minister confirm that there has been a specific study done on a standalone 240-bed nursing home facility, and will she table that study here in the House so that all of New Brunswick can see and confirm the study for themselves? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it is an honor and a privilege to stand here before the Legislative Assembly of New Brunswick as the Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care. And I can certainly say that I understand that there has been zero announcements with regards to a nursing home in Miramichi from the members opposite. Mr. Speaker, my utmost importance is spent on making sure that lives for seniors are better in Miramichi and in the entire province of New Brunswick. Miramichi has waited for a long time to be recognized and have the home that they need and deserve. So, Mr. Speaker, I am extremely proud to say that we are going ahead with a state-of-the-art 240-bed nursing home in Miramichi. Mr. Speaker, I am very proud to make this announcement, and I stand 100% behind it.
Time for question period has expired.